February 20th, 1945. Dawn on Iwo Jima. The volcanic sand is black. The sky is gray. The noise is inhuman. Captain Robert Hugo Dunlap clutches a rifle most Marines have never seen. Serial number A-0-0-0-9. It's not the famous M1 Garand. It's something different. Something that wasn't supposed to be there. He leads Company C uphill into a nightmare. Artillery screams overhead. Mortar rounds churn the earth. Machine gun fire rains down from caves hidden in the cliffs above. The angle is impossible. The enemy is invisible. His men start to fall. One, then another, then more. The advance grinds to a halt. It has to stop. No one can move forward into that hell. But Dunlap does. He leaves his rifle behind and begins to crawl. Alone, 200 yards, through the fire and chaos, until he's just 50 yards from the Japanese positions. His men watch, terrified, unable to help. He finds the enemy gun nests, burns their locations into his mind, and crawls back through the storm of steel. For the next 2 days and 2 nights, without sleep, he directs the bombardment that breaks the enemy's hold on that sector of hell. He survives, against all odds, against mathematics, against everything. Later, much later, he will say the rifle saved his life. The one with the strange rotary-magazine. The one designed by a Boston lawyer who thought he could beat the system. This is the story of that rifle, and the man who created it, and why you've probably never heard of either one. Our story begins not on a battlefield, but in the heart of Boston's elite. August 9th, 1909. Melvin Maynard Johnson Jr. is born into a world of privilege. His father is a renowned attorney, law professor, and co-founder of a prestigious firm. For young Maynard, as his family calls him, Harvard is expected and success is assumed. But there's a problem. Maynard can't focus on just one thing. He excels at Harvard, graduates with a science degree in 1931, then goes right back for law school, graduating again in 34. By 25, he's a lawyer in his father's firm and teaching criminal law at Boston University. He has everything a young man of his standing could want, and he is utterly, completely bored. Because in his spare time, whatever spare time he can find, Melvin Johnson is designing firearms, not for hunting or sport. He's designing military weapons, semi-automatic rifles with rotating bolts and recoil-operated actions, light machine guns. He's sketching mechanisms that don't even exist yet. His friends think it's an odd hobby. His colleagues think it's beneath him. His father probably just wonders when he'll grow out of it. But 1933 changes everything. Johnson joins the Marine Corps Reserve as a second lieutenant, not for glory, but for access. Access to the schools. Access to testing facilities. Access to the U.S. Army's Springfield Armory, the very place where the future of American infantry weapons is being decided. The world is sliding toward another war, and Johnson wants a front-row seat. He devours every course, studies every mechanism, and watches every test, filing away details in his restless legal mind. Then, in 1935, he's assigned to Springfield Armory as an observer. His job is to report on the 2 rifles competing to become America's first standard-issue semi-automatic. The first is the T1 Pedersen rifle, a complex toggle-jointed design. The other is the T3 Garand, a gas-operated rifle designed by a quiet, methodical gunsmith named John Garand, who has spent years perfecting it. Johnson watches. He takes notes. He forms opinions. And he comes to a startling conclusion. Both rifles are flawed. February 29th, 1936. A historic day. John Garand's rifle, now officially designated the M1, is adopted by the United States Army. The military has its weapon. The matter is settled. Production begins. The race is over. But on that very same day, February 29th, 1936, a 26-year-old lawyer pays a machine shop $300 to build a prototype rifle action. He has no factory, no government contract, no engineering degree, and no manufacturing experience. All he has is a design in his head and the unshakable conviction that he can build a better rifle than the entire U.S. Army Ordnance Department. His design is radical. The rotating bolt has 10 locking lugs. The system is recul-operated, not gas-operated like the Garand. This means the barrel itself moves backward with the bolt during firing, absorbing recoil that would otherwise slam into the shooter's shoulder. On paper, it sounds too complex, with too many moving parts. It seems like a recipe for failure. But it works. In April of 1936, Johnson files his first patent. By August, the first complete prototype rifle is finished. Meanwhile, the M1 Garand is already in production, being issued to troops and becoming standardized across the Army. For anyone else, the window of opportunity would seem slammed shut, bolted, and welded. But Melvin Johnson here, he's a Marine. He's a lawyer. He is used to arguing against precedent, against the established order. And he is absolutely convinced that when the war comes and everyone can see it coming, his rifle will prove superior on the battlefield. All he has to do is convince everyone else. The fight had only just begun. Spring 1938. The world is on the brink of war, and at Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland, a lawyer from Boston named Melvin Johnson has a rifle he believes can change everything. He's partnered with Marlin Firearms to build a prototype, and he convinces the Army Ordnance Board to just take a look. Not an official trial, just an informal test. The Johnson rifle does well. Its accuracy is good, and its innovative 10-round rotary magazine can be topped off one bullet at a time. This is a huge advantage over the M1 Garand, which requires its entire 8-round clip to be used up before it can be reloaded. The Army notes the rifle's strengths, but then comes the list of weaknesses. The early magazine design is problematic. The recoiling barrel, while part of its innovative action, causes shots to climb. The mechanism is complex, with small parts that could easily be lost in the field. But the most damning criticism has nothing to do with the rifle itself. The M1 Garand is already in production. It's already standardized. Changing course now would cost millions, delay production, and leave American troops underarmed as Europe slides into chaos. The Army says no, but Johnson doesn't give up. He goes back to the drawing board, redesigning the magazine into an elegant 10-round rotary system. He refines the bolt, improves the extraction, and adds a better cocking handle. He keeps working because he knows his rifle has a secret weapon, an advantage the Garand can never match. The barrel detaches with a simple twist, breaking the rifle into 2 compact pieces. It's perfect for a new kind of soldier, the paratrooper. Perfect for a new kind of warfare the military is just beginning to imagine. But the Army isn't listening. So, in May 1940, Johnson does what any good lawyer would do. He appeals to a higher court. Using his family's political connections, he gets a hearing before Congress. He argues his case with the passion of an attorney, claiming his rifle is more accurate, more reliable, and better suited for the coming war. Congress is intrigued and pressures the Marine Corps to conduct their own tests. Unlike the Army, the Marines haven't fully adopted the Garand yet. They're still carrying bolt-action rifles from the First World War. They need modern weapons, and they need them now. So they test the Johnson. The results are stunning. The Johnson rifle scores an 81.2% accuracy rating, while the M1 Garand scores only 71.3%. Captain George Van Orden writes in his summary that the Johnson is materially superior to the M1 in accuracy and potential combat efficiency. Johnson is one, on paper at least. But bureaucracy is a powerful force. The Army Ordnance Department has invested years and millions into the Garand. They've written the manuals, trained the armorers, and built the production lines. Admitting the Johnson rifle is better would mean admitting they were wrong. The Army says no, again. The Marines, dependent on the Army for supplies, reluctantly follow suit. The Johnson rifle, better in almost every measurable way, has been rejected. But rejection isn't defeat. By 1941, the world is on fire. The Dutch government, exiled in London, still controls the oil-rich Dutch East Indies and needs to defend them from the encroaching Japanese Empire. But every major arms manufacturer is already at full capacity. Then someone remembers the rifle that lost the American trials. The Dutch are interested. Johnson demonstrates the rifle. He shows them the detachable barrel, the rotary-magazine, the incredible accuracy. They're sold. They place an order for over 10,000 rifles. Johnson, a lawyer who designs guns in his spare time, suddenly has to become a manufacturer. He establishes Cranston Arms Company in Rhode Island. One of his rifle's key advantages is that it can be built with standard machinery, a crucial factor when every specialized factory is already committed. Production begins. The first rifles shipped to the Dutch East Indies in early 1942, but history has other plans. On December 7, 1941, the Japanese attack Pearl Harbor. A few months later, they invade the Dutch East Indies. Only about 2,000 Johnson rifles make it to the Dutch forces before the islands fall. The rest, over 8,000 of them, are now sitting in a warehouse in the United States, orphaned weapons belonging to a government in exile. Johnson's great success has turned into a massive failure, but the United States Marine Corps is about to enter the story. In March 1942, the elite 1st Marine Parachute Battalion is training to jump behind enemy lines in the Pacific. The problem? They're training with old bolt-action Springfields because the Army gets priority for the new M1 Garands. Melvin Johnson, still a Marine Reserve officer, hears about their predicament. He shows up with 23 of his M1941 rifles. He calls it a loan, a test. The Marines accept. On August 7, 1942, those 23 rifles go to war. During the assault on WWII in the Solomon Islands, the Johnson rifles perform flawlessly. The paratroopers love them. The detachable barrel is useful, the accuracy is deadly, and the ability to top off the magazine in the middle of a firefight is a lifesaver. The rifles work. But 23 rifles don't change military policy. They're just a footnote, until someone notices. In October, the 2nd Parachute Battalion requests Johnson rifles for their entire unit. The rifles still technically belong to the Dutch, but the exiled government gives its permission. 650 rifles are shipped to the Marines in San Diego. There's no time for inspections. The Marines need rifles, and these rifles exist. That's all that matters. Now, a total of 773 Johnson rifles are in the hands of the Marine Corps. It's a tiny number, but they being carried by the most elite units in the Pacific, the paratroopers and the raiders. These are the men who operate independently, who can't afford a weapon to fail. The Johnson rifle becomes a symbol of these elite warriors. It's not mass adoption, but it's proof. February 19, 1945. The black volcanic beaches of Iwo Jima. Hay Hour. 30,000 U.S. Marines are hitting the shore in one of the largest amphibious assaults of the Pacific War. Their target, a tiny 8-square-mile island holding 3 airfields keys to the entire Allied strategy. But the Japanese defenders had spent months turning this island into a fortress. It's a maze of tunnels, hidden bunkers, and perfectly calculated fields of fire. Every single inch is prepared for the invasion. In the middle of this storm is Captain Robert Hugo Dunlop. He's the commander of Company C, 1st Battalion, 26th Marines. At just 24 years old, he's already a battle-hardened veteran, known for his calm, disciplined leadership. And his personal weapon is a unique one, an M1941 Johnson rifle with the serial number A0009, February 20th. Day 2. Captain Dunlap's company is pinned down, trying to advance toward the cliffs that dominate the battlefield. Visibility is almost zero, the terrain is treacherous, and a relentless hail of enemy fire is coming from positions nobody can see. The advance is completely stalled, and Marines are stuck, exposed, and unable to move forward until they can locate the source of that fire. It's here that Captain Dunlap makes a decision that will echo through Marine Corps history. He puts down his Johnson rifle. He gets low, pressing himself against the black sand. And then he starts to crawl. Alone. He crawls for hundreds of yards, moving out far ahead of his own lines, toward the unseen enemy. His men can only watch, their hearts in their throats. They can't follow him. They can't provide covering fire without knowing where to shoot. They know the odds are impossibly stacked against him. But Dunlap keeps going, inch by painful inch, up the steep, open terrain. He crawls until he is close enough to see what no one else can, the hidden machine gun nests and mortar positions carved into the rock. Then he crawls all the way back. And this is only the beginning. For the next 2 days and 2 nights, Dunlap stays forward of his company, a lone figure directing the battle. At times, he stands fully exposed to enemy fire, just so he can get a better angle to adjust the supporting naval gunfire and artillery. He relays coordinates, calls in corrections, and maps out every enemy emplacement. He works without rest, without sleep, and without a moment of hesitation, until the network of defenses blocking his company is finally neutralized. When the sector is finally clear, Company C moves forward. On February 26th, Captain Dunlap is wounded and evacuated from the island. He would spend more than a year recovering in hospitals. On December 18, 1945, at the White House, President Harry Truman awards him the Medal of Honor for his extraordinary courage. For the rest of his life, Dunlap keeps his M1941 Johnson rifle, serial number A009. It sits proudly displayed in his home for over 5 decades, a silent testament to his survival. When the legendary actor John Wayne offers to buy the rights to his story in 1949, Dunlap refuses. He feels the experience was too real, too personal, to be turned into a Hollywood movie. Captain Dunlap passed away in 2000 at the age of 79. His rifle, a quiet artifact from a moment of incredible bravery, now resides in a collection in Illinois, a reminder of a man who chose to crawl toward danger so that others could advance behind him. The story of Dunlap's rifle is a story of heroism, but it's also the story of a weapon that almost changed everything. The M1941 Johnson rifle was the brainchild of Melvin Johnson Jr., a Marine Corps officer and a brilliant driven firearms designer. In the late 1930s, as the world was sliding toward war, Johnson saw a problem. The U.S. military was about to adopt the M1 Garand, a fantastic rifle, but one he believed had flaws. He was convinced he could do better, so he designed his own. The M1941 Johnson rifle was elegant, innovative, and in many ways ahead of its time. It had a unique rotary-magazine that could be topped off with individual rounds at any time, a feature the Garand lacked. It was a takedown rifle, meaning it could be quickly disassembled into a compact package, perfect for paratroopers. Its recoil-operated action was smooth and controllable. Johnson wasn't just some garage tinkerer. He was a serious contender. He lobbied Congress. He challenged the Garand in head-to-head trials, and he came incredibly close to getting his rifle adopted as the primary service weapon for the United States. But the Garand had momentum. The military had already invested heavily in its production. Switching to a new rifle on the eve of war was seen as too risky and too disruptive. The Johnson rifle lost the race. But it didn't disappear. It found a different path. A total of just under 22,000 Johnson rifles were ever made. It's a tiny number compared to the millions of Garands produced. Only 773 of them ever officially made it into the hands of the U.S. Marine Corps, where they were used by elite Paramarine and Raider battalions. These were the men who needed a lightweight, packable rifle, and the Johnson was a perfect fit. The rest of the rifles became global travelers. They were sent to the Dutch for use in the East Indies, to Norwegian forces, and to Chile. After the war, they popped up in conflicts all over the world. They were carried by nationalist Chinese forces. They appeared during the Indonesian Revolution, and a handful even showed up in the hands of CIA-backed fighters during the Bay of Pigs invasion in Cuba in 1961. The rifle that had threatened to reshape American military policy instead became a niche weapon, valued by those who understood its unique advantages. But the real influence of Melvin Johnson's design wasn't in the number of rifles he built. It was in the ideas he pioneered. And this is where the story takes a fascinating turn. Fast forward to the 1950s. Fairchild Armalite, a small engineering company in California. A team of designers, led by the legendary Eugene Stoner, is working on a new generation of military rifles. They are focused on lightweight materials, modern ergonomics, and radical, forward-thinking mechanics. They create the AR-10, a revolutionary battle rifle, which would later be scaled down to become the even more famous AR-15. The AR-15 used a direct impingement gas system, which was groundbreaking. But look closer. Look at the heart of the weapon, the bolt. It features a rotating, multi-lug locking mechanism that locks directly into the barrel extension. This design is strong, lightweight, and reliable. And where did that idea come from? It drew directly from the patents and principles that Melvin Johnson had developed for his rifle years earlier. Armalite was so impressed with his work that they brought Melvin Johnson on as a consultant. His technical knowledge, his patents, and his credibility as a Marine officer and a weapons designer were invaluable in refining and promoting the AR-15. And here lies one of the greatest ironies in firearms history. The AR-15 would eventually be adopted by the U.S. military as the M16. The M16 would go on to replace the M4, which had succeeded the M1 Garand. In other words, the man whose rifle lost to the Garand became a key architect of the rifle that would ultimately replace the Garand's family line. Melvin Johnson's engineering DNA is embedded in the very core of the M16, the most widely used American military rifle of the entire modern era. On January 9, 1965, Melvin Johnson Jr. passed away suddenly in New York City. He was only 55. He had spent his life working on weapon systems, cartridges, and even contributing to the development of the Vulcan rotary cannon. His obituary was brief and respectful. It mentioned his wartime contributions, his rifles, and his machine guns. But it didn't mention how close he came to changing American small arms doctrine. It didn't note the quiet, hidden legacy he built into the mechanical heart of the AR-15 and M16. His company faded away. His name never became famous like Browning or Colt, but his ideas endured. Melvin Johnson left a legacy not of fame, but of innovation. It's a legacy that continues to shape the world of firearms long after his passing, not in big headlines, but in the intricate mechanics of the rifles carried by generations of soldiers. He was a man who may not have won the race in his own time, but who ended up guiding the future. The M1 Garand, the name itself echoes through history. 8 million of them were made. It was the standard issue rifle for every American infantryman in World War II and the Korean War. General George S. Patton himself called it the greatest battle implement ever devised. It was reliable, rugged, and battle-proven. It was everything a service rifle needed to be. And it won. History is written by the winners, and the M1 Garand wrote volumes. But what if I told you there was another rifle? A rifle that, in many ways, was better. A rifle that lost the competition, but whose ghost still haunts the firearms world today. This is the story of the M1941 Johnson rifle, On the range, the Johnson was a tack driver. It was more accurate than the Garand, a feature that any shooter would appreciate. But a rifle's true test isn't a pristine range. It's the mud, grit, and chaos of the battlefield. And that's where the Johnson's story gets complicated. Its unique recoiling barrel design, while innovative, caused issues with vertical shot dispersion that were never quite ironed out. It was a complex machine, a masterpiece of engineering that became a nightmare for a soldier trying to field strip it in the dark. It had small parts, easy to lose in the muck and mire of combat. So the Garand was simpler, more robust for the average GI. But the Johnson had some clever tricks up its sleeve. You could top off its internal rotary magazine with individual rounds at any time, even with the bolt closed. You didn't have to wait for the signature asterisk, ping asterisk of an empty end-block clip, a sound some feared could give away a soldier's position. Its barrel could be quickly detached, a brilliant feature for paratroopers jumping out of a plane. The multi-lug rotating bolt was years ahead of its time. So which rifle was truly better? Well, that depends entirely on what you value. Do you prioritize standardization and simplicity, or innovation and sophistication? Do you want a system that works well enough for everyone, or a specialized tool that works excellently for the experts? In the late 1930s, with the storm clouds of war gathering over Europe, the U.S. military made its choice. They chose standardization. They chose simplicity. They chose the M1 Garand, the rifle that was already in production, already proven and already integrated into their training and doctrine. Looking back, they were probably right. Changing the entire military standard rifle on the eve of the largest conflict in human history could have been a logistical catastrophe. It was a classic case of the good enough solution that's available now, beating the potentially better solution that isn't quite ready for prime time. But that wasn't the end of the Johnson rifle, not by a long shot. While the Army said no, the United States Marine Corps, always the innovators, were intrigued. They acquired a small number for their elite paramarine units. And so it was that 773 Marines carried the M1941 Johnson into the crucible of the Pacific War. And they liked them. They trusted them. In the brutal, close-quarters fighting of the island-hopping campaign, some credited the Johnson with saving their lives. One of those Marines was Captain Robert Hugo Dunlop. At Iwo Jima, one of the bloodiest battles of the war, Captain Dunlop carried a Johnson rifle, serial number A009. He led his men up a sheer volcanic cliff, directly into a storm of enemy machine gun and mortar fire. For his incredible bravery that day, he would receive the Medal of Honor, one of only 82 Marines to be so honored for actions at Iwo Jima. The rifle that the Army had rejected, the rifle that shouldn't have even existed in a combat zone, was there. It was in the hands of a hero who refused to stop in a battle that symbolized the horrific cost of victory in the Pacific. History is written by the winners, yes, but sometimes the losers change the game in ways no one sees coming. Melvin Johnson, the designer of the rifle, was a Boston lawyer who moonlighted as a firearms genius. He lost the big military contracts. He lost the chance to arm America. His company eventually faded away, but his ideas, his designs, they were just getting started. Take a look at an M16 rifle, the weapon that would replace the Garand's descendants. Look at the AR-15 platform that dominates the modern civilian market. What do you see? You see Melvin Johnson's ghost. That multi-lug rotating bolt, a core feature of the AR-15, is a direct descendant of the bolt in his rifle. His deep understanding of recoil operation and innovative magazine designs influenced generations of firearms that followed. His ideas were quietly absorbed into the mainstream, becoming the new standard. Today, an original M1941 Johnson rifle is a rare and coveted collector's item, with pristine examples fetching tens of thousands of dollars. Of the 773 that the Marines carried, Most were lost to the attrition of war or sold off as surplus after. But the rifle's legacy isn't just about its rarity. It's a powerful lesson. It proves that sometimes the best answer loses to the acceptable answer that got there first. It shows how institutional bureaucracy can stifle brilliant innovation. The outsider with the better idea can be shut out by the insiders with the established support system. And yet, sometimes years later, everyone starts using the outsider's ideas anyway. They just don't always remember where they came from. Melvin Johnson was a lawyer who dared to think he could design a better rifle than the entire U.S. Army Ordnance Department. He was right about some things, and maybe wrong about others. He created a rifle that 773 of America's most elite warriors trusted with their very lives. And he created the concepts that would arm America for the next 60 years, even though his name doesn't appear in the field manuals or on the official adoption papers. He proved that being right isn't always enough. Timing is everything, and institutional inertia is one of the most powerful forces on Earth. Innovation doesn't always win the first battle, but Melvin Johnson's ideas, in the end, won the war. Today, Captain Dunlap's Johnson rifle, serial number A0009, sits in a climate-controlled display case in a museum in Illinois. The metal has aged. The wooden stock has darkened with time and use. But the mechanism, the heart of the rifle, still functions perfectly. And somewhere in the action of every modern AR-15, in the precise lockup of a rotating bolt on a rifle at your local range, in the very design philosophy of modular weapon systems, the ghost of Melvin Johnson is still making its case, still insisting he was right, still refusing to take no for an answer.